right, Epic Battle. This has got to be like number 20 or 30 or something, eh? Probably longer than that.
Yet just as epic as all the rest.
It's always epic. Always epic. Okay, so this was mostly Jeff's idea. This was, well, actually, it was completely your idea. Let's give credit where credit's due. This is 1997 debut album battle between Big Wreck in Loving Memory and Third Eye Blind's Third Eye Blind, self-titled. Yeah, so both albums came out in 1997. Both were the debut record of the band, and I'm not sure if Jeff's going to disagree with me, but for me, I think these are by far the band's best records. They, I don't think either band did better than these. These records, I think, are both pretty much perfect albums. I did a lot of listening the last few days, and yeah, they're incredible. There's quite a few songs on each record, 14 or 15, I think, for each one, which was trendy at the time to pack as much music onto a CD as possible. I think that trend's reversing a little bit now. But yeah, so Big Wreck is Canadian, Third Eye Blind's American. Third Eye Blind sold a lot more records, probably because they're American. I think stylistically, Third Eye Blind is a little bit more in the pop alternative realm. Big Wreck is kind of in the blues, almost hard rock, maybe quasi metal realm. I don't maybe metal's a little too far, but yeah, I would say hard rock blues, and then Third Eye Blind is rock pop alternative. Bands always hate labels, so we don't need to label it. But yeah, so want to go first, Jeff, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, what were the sales figures, James?
Good question. I think okay, Loving Memory, I think was double platinum in Canada. Yeah. Although they did have singles in the US though. Uh, that's a good question. I don't see any sales figures on Wikipedia. I'm gonna guess between maybe double platinum in Canada, possibly gold in the States. That's what I'm guessing. Let's check Third Eye Blind. Um, I know this album did very well. This was a big record.
11 million.
Okay, the States it was 6 million.
Okay.
So maybe worldwide, probably 8. Yeah, tons of hits off this album. But yeah, I mean, both are very, very good records. The mid to late '90s was a good year for music. That was when CD sales were just huge. There was a lot of money being thrown around.
No internet.
No internet. Yeah, no. Um, yeah, it was a really good time. I remember that time, and
They just don't make them like
I
they
miss
used to.
I miss those times. Just an overabundance of information, and yeah, I don't quite understand popular music today at all. But hey, that's okay. I guess we're just getting old. That's what happens.
Mhm.
But yeah, I have absolutely no desire to be trendy at this point. Just seeing what's out there, I just no. I'd rather hang on to the old stuff. That's where I'm at.
Big wreck for life is what I say.
Big Wreck for life. What a great name, eh? Big Wreck.
I
Big
actually think
Wreck.
Third Eye Blind is a fucking awesome name too.
It's good. Yeah, good. Yeah, yeah, good name too. Yep. Yeah, this was a tough one. I mean, I have one that I definitely I'm going to pick as my favorite of the two, but it wasn't for it wasn't because the other CD was lacking or the other album was lacking for any reason. It was just a personal thing. But both albums are just so well done. Songwriting's fantastic. Um, why don't you go first, Jeff?
So as a precursor to this, I am a huge fan of both bands. I have everything that all of those bands have ever done. I have
Fair enough.
every Third Eye Blind album. I have every Big Wreck and Thornley album.
Wow. Okay.
Um, so I've done 26 years of research on these albums.
You're well versed. Okay.
Well versed.
Yeah.
These, I think, were actually the first and second non-Oasis rock albums I ever bought. So special to me, both of them very special. They continue to be important throughout my whole life. They're always, I can always put it on, always enjoy it. I never get tired of them. Um, both albums incredibly solid front to back. You mentioned long albums. Third Eye Blind is 14 songs, I think. I think Big Rex is 13. But I think minute for minute, you're probably into the same actual amount of music, probably within 5 minutes. I'd say they're both long albums. Both of these bands had a lot to say on their debut. Interestingly enough, I heard that Third Eye Blind was the highest advance paid by any record label ever for a debut band when they first were signed to Elektra Records,
Wow.
which is a pretty significant achievement. Um, when it comes to the sales figures of these albums, I think it kind of betrays. I mean, like you said, we're from Canada, so I think Big Wreck were Ian Thornley's Canadian. The rest of them are from the States. I think they met at college in like in Boston. I think at a whatever
Berkeley.
musical school is there, like prestigious, like Juilliard, but whatever's in Boston.
Yeah.
Um,
Berkeley. Yeah.
Berkeley, yes, same place John Mayer went. So, um, if we're gonna get down to brass tacks, I think that the musicianship is greater in the Big Wreck album. I think they are better musicians. Ian Thornley is maybe the greatest guitar player of his generation. I also think he's a better singer than Stephen Jenkins. However, that doesn't diminish the artistry of both records. Like, you don't have to be a great singer to make a great album. And I think he's a good singer. Um,
Hmm.
he can be soft and vulnerable. So can Ian Thornley. Ian Thornley's got a lot more power to his voice, though. I mean, he can belt it out a little bit better. Whereas Stephen Jenkins is a little more on the punk rock thing,
Yeah.
a little more screamy.
Yeah.
Um, as vocalists, I like them both. I like the musicianship in both albums. Uh, I can tell Ian Thornley is a better guitar player than anybody in Third Eye Blind.
Yeah.
That being said, if we're going to judge the albums, I think when I say pound for pound, I mean track for track. And one has 13, one has 14. The Big Wreck album is completely solid front to back without a single dud. And I would have to say, I think there's one dud in, Third Eye Blind's self-titled debut. I don't really remember which one it is. It's somewhere towards the 3/4 mark of the album. If I had to find it right now, I would say that I could pick it out. It's maybe a little fast paced, a little too punk rock for my liking, and it is called.
London.
Um, it's either London or Burning or yeah, I think it is London. That's the track I like the least.
Yeah.
And again, I don't even hate it. It's just one of the ones I could do without. The Big Wreck album has no duds. There's maybe one song I like less than the rest of them, but it is not. I don't consider it a dud. So, um, this was a tough one for me uh, because I have nostalgic memories of both these albums, and again, I love them both to this day. but I will clearly say that Big Wreck and Loving Memory of is the album I choose.
Okay.
It is so solid.
Yeah.
And the 1-2 punch of uh, the Oath, My Luck Is Wasted, and then that song, like 1 and 2, and then the album, the rest of the album.
Yeah.
That's like a left jab and a right hook right there. Um,
Yeah.
and the Third Eye Blind starts with Losing a Whole Year, which I still love, but that wasn't a big hit in the hierarchy of hits from that album. I mean, those hits were Semi Charmed Life, How's It Gonna Be, Jumper, and Graduate. And those ones are all like, a third of the way down, a third to 3/4 of the way is how you get into all those songs. But Big Wreck just comes at you. You're at the OK Corral and both 6-shooters are firing. Third Eye Blind make you wait to get into the album a little bit, which is fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I will agree with you on the Third Eye Blind album that is by far their best album. I personally feel that although the first one has all the beloved hits and Loving Memory of, the second Big Wreck album I think is actually technically better because it's longer. It has 16 songs. It's really long. It is dense. I like that one too. I listen to it less because, again, it's the one that doesn't have all the big hits on it. But In Loving Memory is the one that everybody, is nostalgic about and that everybody remembers and has all, Under the Lighthouse, Blown Wide Open, The Oath, My Luck Is Wasted, and that song. But, it's got a lot of really deep cuts too, like Under the Lighthouse, and they kind of played that on the radio here a little bit, overemphasizing Look What I Found. There's a lot of really, really, there's a lot of really dense songs, and a lot of them sound different. It's they didn't make My Luck Is Wasted 10 times on that album. They really did switch it up, and I think they really wanted to showcase their chops as players and songwriters. And it is rare that a band or even the two bands come out that polished on round one. I'll definitely agree with you though that In Loving Memory, My Luck Is Wasted is their best song. And that's the first song anyone heard from them. They came out of the gate with that one. It's the one that they close with all the time. It's the one everybody knows and loves. It's the one that hooked everyone way back in the day, and I think is what really solidified their fan base. I would say the same thing with Third Eye Blind 2 with Semi Charmed Life. Although Third Eye Blind do have more songs that are, if not better, equally as good. If I'm going to be, I'm not going to say that it's an overly poppy. Like who knows who chose that song as the first single? It definitely was the most radio accessible. Maybe that's why. Maybe they chose it. Maybe the label did. Who knows? Definitely good choice for a single because it roped everybody in.
It worked.
I mean, yeah, Never Let You Go from the next album was really good too as a lead-off single. I like that one just as much. I think How's It Gonna Be is better personally. I like that one more, and that was the second single. So, just I'm gonna say that when it comes to the Big Wreck album, I love the big hits. My Luck Is Wasted is the best song on the album. Same with The Oath. I love everything else. But to me, the Third Eye Blind album really gets going towards the end with I Want You. with the
Great song.
background, which is a stunning, stunning song,
Yeah.
and the God of Wine, which
Yeah.
they're just really well written, and
Yeah.
he can tackle heartbreak in how's it going to be is a start. It's kind of, I'm not going to say abstract. It's a little more right to your, you know, like the hammock in the hall that we spend time in swings empty. I don't see lightning that lit that spark. It's a little more straightforward. It's definitely about heartache, whereas the background is about, I don't know, a loved one, maybe a family member that died, or somebody that I don't see you since the hospital. Um, it's a little more abstract. And the God of Wine, I really don't know what it's about, but it's sad. Whatever it is, it's a mournful, maybe a longing, a sense of that you miss someone. I mean, I don't know. That's the sense I get when I listen to it. Um,
Cool.
I gotta say too, the Third Eye Blind album is, that Brooke was a big fan of Third Eye Blind, and that was her and I really didn't see eye to eye on a lot of music, but she loved that album. And that was definitely our common ground right there. Third Eye Blind and Matchbox 20. Those were two albums that we both really liked when we were younger, and we still like to this day. And actually, it was Brooke that made me. So Big Wreck, I followed my whole life. Anything they've ever put out, I bought when it comes out. But Third Eye Blind, I kind of thought that maybe their '90s work is gonna sit in my collection, and I'm gonna enjoy it. But then, before she died, she played me like a new Third Eye Blind song that I loved, and I went out and bought everything they ever did from 2003 onward, and they're still making music to this day, and I like all of it.
Nice.
Definitely though, Big Wreck, the band beat Ian Thornley, tremendous musician and singer. Uh, Brian Doherty too was the guitar player. And I don't really know how they shared guitar duties. I think basically they both. There were two lead guitar players in that band, Brian Doherty and Ian Thornley, and they would share. I don't know who really played what.
Mm-hmm.
All of their guitar parts are intricate. Even the way they layer their effects on the, like, I love that double up effect with the, maybe it's some type of chorus effects on the, with a reverb and a delay on My Luck Is Wasted, and how it kind of just doubles and fades out with a delay in the background. And you know
Yeah, it
it's just,
sounds. It's like a tremolo or some kind of volume thing where it's kind of with a delay on it. Yeah, it'd be
and
fun,
he's
fun
playing
to
he's
try to
playing
copy.
over top of the loop as it
And it's a little bit,
repeats,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
I have loved that since, and not only have I loved that from the, and that's how the song starts.
yeah.
That's how the song hits you. But I love at the end that little like country jamboree kind of shindig that he gets into after the song dies down, and then it's just the acoustic guitar, and it's a bit of like a country jam at the end. Like, I feel like the artistry is a little more in, Third Eye Blind had a couple songs, and they went in and they're like, we're just going to rock these ones out. Maybe the producer added a little to them.
Yep.
But, the songs were pretty well formed. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, maybe Big Wreck, when they got in the studio, they really worked, and they're like, they experimented and they tried things, and they really, they did the most to those songs that they possibly could. And I think, to me, it sounds like when that album was done, they must have been so happy with it. They were like, this is truly an expression of who we are right now,
Yeah,
and this is modern rock at its best. You know, from from the kids to their parents, this is something for everybody. Whereas Third Eye Blind was definitely more aimed at your my age group, I would say. I mean, I when in '97, I was when that album dropped, I was 19, I think. Um, and I remember it was they were both big albums in '98. So let's say I was 20 when they both dropped, but they were both, the Third Eye Blind was strictly aimed for the adolescent to early adult. It was definitely made for the radio, and Big Rec was for the radio too. It was just a little more. These were artists that were that were trying to make their mark on rock history. And I think Third Eye Blind was just a bunch of guys, and they're like, we want to rock out, we want to play to people, and they weren't too concerned with having a lasting legacy in rock music. And even though that they did make a great album that has stood the test of time. Um, I think maybe because Big Rec went to Juilliard, they wanted to stick it to their teachers and be like, "Fuck you! You don't think rock music is, you got to play in a jazz band to be considered, talented? Well, here's to you." So that's kind of my take on things. But both albums incredible. I love them. I love them both. And as a side note too, during that era of Big Rec music, there were two songs that weren't on their debut that were released in the same era, like before the second album, and one was on like a Big Shiny Tunes, I think, or something like that, or a Much Music compilation called Ill Advice.
Okay.
And it was on in a fucking Molson Canadian beer promo, and I think it was called Still Holding.
Okay.
Both great songs too that could have been on that album that they left off for promo reasons. And Third Eye Blind also had some good B-sides from that era too, like Horror Show and Tattoo of the Sun was a song that they played a lot live in those days. So these guys both came with with the full clip of songs. They did it right. The promo was good on all these albums. The singles were right. Like the labels handled these albums correctly. Like it was just. It brings me back to a time when labels were interested in signing bands, and they were going to nurture them and pull the best that they could out of these bands. And that is certainly an example with both of these artists. Both of them came out of the gate with bringing the heat, and both stellar albums. But my vote is for Big Rec. That was an incredibly lengthy review, but that's Big Rec for me.
Big Rec. Okay, cool. Okay, so I guess just my quick take on both records. So yeah, I definitely was more into Big Rec at the time, and I got into Third Eye Blind probably in the mid 2000s, maybe a little earlier, maybe 2002, probably when the third album was starting to come out. So yeah, Big Rec is definitely kind of more embedded in my emotional DNA. I just really fond memories of just hanging out with buddies, listening to this record front to back. Ian Thornley always reminded me of Chris Cornell. I think they kind of had a similar hairdo. I think they sound similar.
Facially, they even look a little similar.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean anything. I like them both a lot. So maybe it's a compliment that he's.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to if you're going to look like someone. Chris Cornell couldn't hurt, right?
It's true.
He's a handsome fella.
He is. Yep, he is. Yeah. So for us, I will say though, both bands have pretty bad album covers. I don't like either album cover. Not a big deal, but they're both kind of fuzzy. I don't know what In Loving Memory. I don't know what the In Loving Memory cover means. It just kind of looks like a blurry orange mountainside. I don't know what that is. Not a big deal. Probably my only criticism of these two albums is the album covers are a little subpar. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna say that Third Eye Blind has, I think, stronger songs. Like lyrically, the songs are a little stronger. Um, uh, but yeah, I'm gonna agree with Jeff. I'm gonna go with Big Wreck on this one too. I think Big Wreck. High five for Big Wreck. I think it's just, you know what it is. It's that I love that Big Wreck nailed that style of just, you know, country, hard rock, blues modernized. You know what I mean? Like it was trend. It was heavy, but it was soft. It was a perfect style, and the recording is amazing. It sounds like a live band in a room. Um, Whereas I think Third Eye Blind has stellar production as well. It's Kevin Valentine, I think, but it sounds more processed. Like it's very strategically recorded, like overdubbed and perfect. Whereas Big Wreck sounds like just a band playing in the studio live off the floor, and it just sounds so good, so raw. But you know, like it sounds raw, but it's not raw, but it sounds raw, which is awesome. And yeah, I just love the dynamics. I mean, both records have fantastic dynamics, right? Like Big Wreck gets really heavy. You know, even Between You and I mean, it's like that riff is pretty. I mean, that could be considered metal, I guess, right? But then but then you have these soft, like intricate, beautiful, like lullaby like guitar lines as well, right? So it's a really nice range of dynamics and styles there. Um, but yeah, I think Big Wreck it definitely, for all the reasons that you said, I would give it a bit more of an edge. It's just it has that special thing for me too, and it just has more of a raw bluesy rock thing that I like a little better in general. Um, and yeah, I'll add too that Third Eye Blind I think is very misunderstood because of that single, uh because of Semi Charmed Life. I it because it in the 90s there was a lot of those novelty hit songs, right? Like, Len Steal My Sunshine and Chumbawamba, a lot of like
If you don't mind me
songs.
interjecting, Jimmy, "Steal My Sunshine" is the worst fucking song ever made, as far as I'm concerned. Uh, that and "Come On Eileen,"
Oh yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, are the worst songs maybe that Pitbull didn't record.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I mean, novelty songs aren't like I mean they work as hits, right? But the '90s was full of those. I mean, you can even say the Beastie Boys had a lot of those songs, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It can be bad, but I think with Third Eye Blind, it maybe the people didn't realize that the band was actually a really really in depth, um, uh, very very high level songwriting band. I think that song could have been mistaken for just kind of a fly by night '90s.
Maybe they were pigeonholed a little bit with
Yeah,
and maybe even the just the
yeah.
do. It's a little. You could say that maybe that. I mean that to me that really works, and I couldn't imagine the song without it. But somebody that doesn't like them could say that is just trite shit. That's not even fucking lyrics. That's just doing. And you're right. Maybe they were pigeonholed a little bit, and they're that do band from the '90s that
Yeah, exactly.
nobody
Yeah.
cares about anymore.
Whereas Big Wreck, I mean, like none of the songs that were released, the O for that song, I mean, you knew what Big Wreck was right away. I mean, maybe the Oath, because it builds, it was a nice long build. You didn't know right away, but you definitely, there was no false advertising in any of the singles that they released. Like it was what the band was. So I think Big Wreck had a better single representation. Um, and oh yeah, and I will say there are a lot of good songs on the follow up album, The Pleasure and the Greed. But I remember being really let down by that record. I remember I remember me and my buddies were just so obsessed with In Loving Memory that we were expecting the moon with the next record, right? We were expecting, you know, Dark Side of the Moon or something, or we were expecting, you know, like Physical Graffiti style, like an opus, right? And I really didn't think the band like delivered personally. I was let down. But you know,
He's also pretty dismissive. Ian Thornley's dismissive of that album. He doesn't like the way it was recorded. He thinks they spent too long on it, and there's
yeah,
uh, they they should have maybe toned it down a little bit and tightened it up. I think is what he said. Uh, and
I
that's the
definitely
common
agree.
consensus I think amongst Big Wreck fans is that that album was a letdown. It
Yeah,
was it was bloated or self-indulgent or too long or too varied or not enough bangers on it or whatever you want to say. Um, but I remember being let down by an awful lot more music. So that album I remember came out. I believe it was June of 2001, and I remember there were a lot of albums that I was really looking forward to that came out. In fact, I think it was like week after week they all came out, and it was Depeche Mode's Exciter, The Cult, Beyond Good and Evil, and this Big Wreck. I hated the Depeche Mode. The Cult was disappointing, and the Big Wreck one, I was like, this isn't In Loving Memory of, but it's quite good.
yeah,
And
for
I
sure.
liked the fact that it was really long. And over the years, I've come to appreciate it more. Whereas the Depeche Mode album still sucks, and that Cult album is forgotten about.
Yeah,
But the Big Wreck one is, and to be honest, too, they also broke up after that album.
that's
So the
true.
original band, as we know it, was done. And this is pretty special for me. But not only did I think I saw the very last show they did in Toronto at the Phoenix before they broke up, before the original Big Wreck broke up.
Okay,
But I also saw Big Wreck, that version of Big Wreck, at Roy Thompson Hall in 2001 with a full string section behind them. And it was incredible.
really? Okay,
Uh,
cool.
the acoustics at Roy Thompson Hall are phenomenal. And to have a rock band in there was like, it was just like, it was unlike any show I've ever seen. So, and obviously that was the album they were promoting. They played a lot of songs from that one.
Mm.
So I have very fond memories of that. I've never seen another show like that. That remains like a one-off in, and I don't know if I've been to 100 shows probably, but that's like an anomaly. And I've seen Big Wreck. Never seen Third Eye Blind ever, but I've probably seen Big Wreck maybe more than any other band next to Oasis. I've probably seen them at least 6 or 7 times.
Cool.
Always great, always a winner. They always give you what you want. They bring the musicianship to every concert that they play. One shitty thing though that I also wanted to add uh, to this debate. So, to from my understanding, the original Big Wreck when they formed, it was a partnership kind of between. They all met at Juilliard. They're all talented musicians, but it was really Brian Doherty and Ian Thornley, the two guitar players, that were the the genesis of the band. They were the real the songwriters, and they they had all the ideas really, and I think they were a real band back then where everybody had their own. It was a true melting pot of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
The two of them were the be all and end all,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a real band. Whereas I heard something about Third Eye Blind that is a little uh, disconcerting to me, and that is so I told you before that they signed the biggest. I think they got a $1 million record advance before their album for them to sign to Elektra, which was massive, and it had never happened before where an unsigned band got such a huge record advance. Well, the day before they signed their record deal, Stephen Jenkins went out and copyrighted the name Third Eye Blind. Not the band as a whole, just him. Which is a little dirty because now you control the name. You are you're the shot caller, really, when it comes in effect it makes you the boss, really, if you own the name. Uh and I don't know anything more than that. I would think that the band would have been pretty upset. That's kind of like, to me, that's a bit deceitful. That's not quite band like for you to do that. But you know what obviously worked in his favor? The band as a brand is still around. I don't know how many guys from the original band are still in it.
Mm-hmm.
Much like the new Big Wreck is, I mean, Brian Doherty died a couple of years ago, and it's just Ian Thornley and a bunch of other guys. But
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's just kind of dirty, you
Yeah, it's
that's not what a band does, like if you're a band of brothers, you don't go behind your brother's back and do something shitty that's going to earn you all the money, you know. So
it sounds like an Axl Rose move. Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
and maybe that's where he got the inspiration to do that. But
Maybe.
it's just that doesn't sit. I guess so. First of all, I shouldn't even be judging this because I'm not in a band, and to me, I guess I'm a little too naive and idealistic when it comes to what I think a band should be. Like, because I've never been in one, so what the fuck do I know? Really, nothing. But to me, it's just like, if you're a band of brothers, that's not something you would all go into it together and be like, look, we're gonna go trademark this name so nobody can fuck us out of any merchandising or anything.
For sure.
And if there's a problem with the band, if somebody wants to leave them, we got to buy them out, or we'll come to some kind of legal arrangement. Like, to me, there would be other ways around that where you could handle that and be like, well, you know what, if the drummer develops a big drug habit, then we can kick him out and he's no longer part of the Third Eye Blind brand, and his payments stop there. He doesn't need to keep making money while we're making albums 20 years later. There could be some legal arrangements made in order to negotiate that in a better, more fair manner. So,
All right, Jeff, that was a good one. We're gonna run out of time, but yeah, let's end it there.